You cannot criminalize the status of being a homeless person who needs a place to sleep.
I guess the question is, what if you can? At least Grants Pass in Oregon, well, they're trying. In 2018, Martin versus Boise set the precedent across the West Coast that being homeless is not illegal. You can't be ticketed for sleeping in a public park, for example. A year later, Grants Pass was sued and told they had to stop enforcing their laws that did just that. But they appealed all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And SCOTUS heard those arguments on the case on Monday, which seemed to revolve around one homeless shelter in town. Andrew Bartlane spoke to them about being at the center of challenging the ruling in Boise's case.
If you agree homeless people sleep in parks, gather in tents, and scavenge shopping carts because they have nowhere else to go, then what's Brian Boteller to think?
Yeah.
At the Gospel Rescue Mission in Grants Pass, Oregon.
We actually dropped down to about a 40% capacity.
Oh God, look at that.
The somewhere else to go is not the question, it's just somewhere else that they want.
That somewhere was determined here in Boise. The Ninth Circuit Court ruled homeless people have the right to sleep in public if no shelter beds are available. Low barrier shelter beds.
This is just a secular way of saying we want to create something else that excludes the Christians.
In Grants Pass, homelessness was once
We're kind of like
recognizable.
the old town drunk.
A known face, a known name, now a lost trope.
They just started exploding in the parks. If you told them no to anything, they just got violent.
Violating shelter policy
There's 26 rules for here.
is a one-way ticket back to the street.
There are people who want to leave homelessness and can leave homelessness, and we're trying to get those folks out.
But Boteller estimates 2/3 of people are left behind by consequence of life,
Somebody who's got a debilitating mental illness.
and others by choice.
That's the thing that is being missed, and it's because it seems irrational, I think.
Grants Pass Gospel Rescue Mission is the only overnight shelter in town and plays a central role in the Supreme Court case because there is somewhere else to go, but it has strings attached.
You cannot force somebody to participate in religious service beliefs.
Howard Beladoff represented Robert Martin against Boise.
I don't know, people gotta sleep.
And that court ruling in 2018 validated homelessness to follow the path of least resistance.
Dramatic drop. They're just rules for society, but we call them barriers. We frame them as barriers. Now all of a sudden it's a problem.
In a brief to the Supreme Court, the Gospel Rescue Mission explains they require sobriety, 2 daily church services, and abstinence. The price tag out of a wet Oregon park is open to refusal. More and more take the shoes and the shirt. Just hold the service.
And there's people that just go, yep, you're just too barrier filled.
The Gospel Rescue Mission in Grants Pass brief to the Supreme Court says nearly 1/3 of the people they serve every year get out of homelessness. And that percentage has not changed, even though the number of people going to their shelter for help has dropped, especially since the injunction, he says, that coming from this Supreme Court case. The Gospel Rescue Mission does want the court to strike down Martin. And if Martin was to be overruled, though, Boise actually remains untouched. That's because the city, Brian, settled in Martin versus Boise, so they agreed they would not enforce an anti-camping ordinance. But if the Supreme Court was to overrule that, all the other cities could enforce that because it's a Supreme Court ruling.
So you're saying if they do overturn Martin v. Boise, or at least change that, that means that Boise will then be the only city, at least in the West, that has or doesn't have these rules in place?
That we're familiar with. It would be unique for another city to have some sort of settlement to where they said they wouldn't do that. Boise would be a very friendly city for homeless people.
Interesting. All right. Thank you very much, Andrew.